Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Dialogue with the Youth, so on Gunjur Online TV. Once again, I'm welcoming all of you, our viewers all over the world. Today, Wednesday, on the 2nd of June, 2021, the time in the United Kingdom is just about 7 o'clock. The time in the Gambia, it should be about 6 o'clock, and Eastern time is 2 o'clock. Today we have a special guest, and we are going to have a special interview with this special guest. Before I introduce my guest, just going to give you a little bit of hint, and he will take it from there. His name is Dr. Nick Maurice, an OBE. Dr. Nick Maurice is a doctor, a GP. Welcome, Dr. Nick Maurice. Welcome to Dialogue with the Youth. So,
thank you very much indeed. It's a great privilege to be with you this evening, and I'm looking forward to the interview very much indeed.
Oh, thank you so much, Doctor. I'm going to just give you my viewers a little bit of historical facts anyway about you as a GP, which, from the family wise, that is inherited, obligatorily you have to be a doctor from the Nick Maurice family anyway. Historically, generation of Nick's four parents were doctors, and automatically, for some reason, that family extension has to continue, and he's a doctor. On top of that, Dr. Nick worked for Oxfam. So he was once the chair of Oxfam. He is the founder of Gunjur-Marlborough link, which is we will talk about that link and he's an honorary member of our Gunjur, the all fantastic, we call it Combo Sweden, of Gambia, and we are proud to call Dr. Nick the son of Gunjur. But on top of that, Dr. Nick is also part of the UKAULA, that is UK One World Linking Association. On top of that, also the building understanding through international link for development. For some reason, this man has a sore instinct for international development. But Dr. Nick, you can introduce yourself to our viewers and tell them briefly who you are, and we will start our program and our questioning. Thank you. Welcome to Gunjur Online once again.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Ebrima. And as I say, it's a great privilege to be with you. I should just explain that I have actually been retired as a doctor for nearly 20 years now, so I'm quite an old man. But you're quite right that I come from a very long line of doctors always practicing in Marlborough, in Wiltshire, the small community of Marlborough, which has a population now of about 8,000 people. But I was born in Marlborough, I grew up in Marlborough, I was educated at Marlborough College, and I became eventually the 6th generation of my family to be a general practitioner in Marlborough. And I think that gave me a very, very strong sense of my identity. I know exactly who I am because my background has been so stable. And I think that gave me the self-confidence, if you like, to want to explore the wider world, because I knew that if the worst came to the worst, I could always come back to my home community. And it was at the age of 18 that I left Marlborough College and I took a gap year with a new organization called VSO, which many of you will remember because they used to have an office in the Gambia, voluntary service overseas. And at the age of 18, I worked for VSO. They sent me to Togo in West Africa because I spoke a little bit of French. I had visited France. I'd stayed with a French family on 2 occasions, had learnt some French, and VSO sent me to Francophone West Africa, to Togo. The VSO did not have any money in those days, and I had to work my passage on a liner, the Apapa from the Elder Dempster line. And the very first port that we stopped at on our way from Liverpool in the UK to Nigeria, to Lagos in Nigeria, the very first port that we stopped at was the port of what was then called Bathurst. And I was given shore leave to go ashore for about 3 hours. And that was my very first experience of the Gambia, of Africa, and the Gambia particularly. And I can remember falling in love with what I met in those 3 or 4 hours that I was in Gunjur, in the Gambia rather. I was introduced there was a young boy who took me around and introduced me to women selling mangoes in the market, fish in the market, and so forth. And I met with a sense of community that I hadn't experienced before, that everybody appeared to know everybody else. There was a great feeling of warmth. I was greeted very warmly by the people that I met, and so on. And it was that experience, I think, above all. And then, of course, the year that I spent living with a Muslim family in northern Togo, in Sokode in North Togo, and teaching English at the Collège Moderne in Sokode for a whole year. And that really set me on the path towards international development, that experience at that young age. So I think I probably said enough for the moment, but I'm happy to go on talking about the further development if you would like.
That almost encompasses everything, Dr. Nick. But before we go to our questions and have some comments pouring down, Sehu Jabi says, welcome, Dr. Nick. He said, mashallah, he never aged, still look healthy, and same old Dr. Nick. We are proud of you, doctor. And Mr. Esa Sumare says, Dr. Nick Maurice, great man. Dr. Nick, we have a lot of people, and our creator Tura said, Assalamu alaikum. He said, great man and gentlemen, greetings to all of you, Dr. Nick. And thank you so much for that. I know you went to Togo, Papua New Guinea, Nepal, Cambodia, and Cambodia, all over the place, and we are going to come to them. But why did you become interested in international developments? And why do you volunteer at the age of 18 to teach in Togo, of all places, and they speak French, So strange things in there anyway, especially from a family that know you are where you came from and where you're going to go. They are doctors. At the age of 18, for some reason, you want to travel to an unknown place in Togo and the French-speaking country. Why international developments and why Togo to go and teach there at a young age of 18?
Well, as I say, I think it was because of my sense of identity and knowing exactly who I was, and because of the education that I had received. And by the way, I was sent away to school in Winchester, 35 miles from Marlborough, to a boarding school at the age of 8. So at a very young age, I was sent to this boarding school. And again, that I think gave me the self-confidence to want to explore the wider world. So that is really what provoked me, I think, to want to break out of the bubble that I was in, the bubble of Marlborough, and explore the wider world. And hence my application to VSO, this new organization. Up until 1956, young men in particular, when they left school, they had to do national service. It was very soon after the Second World War, and we all had to do national service. But I was too young to do national service, and it was national service ended in 1956. And Alec Dixon, who was the founder of VSO, he founded VSO in 1958 because he recognized that here were these young men in particular who now no longer had to do national service. Why don't we send them to do service in other parts of the world? Mm-hmm. And it was in 1961 that I left school and applied to VSO and was sent to Togo because I spoke some French.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Doctor. And I know we will have to talk about the Willy Brandt report, which is about North and South, a program for survival. And this report, I will urge all our listeners to go and listen and read this in a booklet if you want, or a report, because it's so relevant today. And I only hope all the leaders in the world will read this and get inspiration from there, and maybe inspire young people like Dr. Nick in Marlborough. Doctor, I will come to you, but I will tell our viewers to share this video so that I know a lot of people are watching, but so that it can reach many people all over the world, because this is so important with somebody not only highly educated, come from a very conservative, a small village or town in Marlborough with all the luxury, and decided to go and give himself in the landline, because sometimes in Cambodia and all, I was reading your book, I thought maybe you're going to be shot there, and you went through everything, go to Togo and the Gambia and Gunjur, which we are going to come. That's rare, really speaking. So people need to learn, about international development, the students in international development, those who want to have a career, and so that this can encourage young people, especially from the BAME minority groups, to take on this role, especially Kombosilla. Our kids are growing, maybe they're 16 years, but we have to encourage them so that they can go. And for example, I will be very happy and proud my kids go to Gunjur, as a VSO or Oxfam and all those things. What a pride that will be for me. So yes, so please share the video, the audio, so that it can reach to as many people as possible. Dr. Nick, can you tell us about the brand report and the impact that had on you, and which lead to the formation of Marlborough brand group, so that the younger generation who didn't read the book might know how these things came about?
Well, let me start by saying that after I'd worked in Togo, I then became a medical student at Cambridge University and then at St Mary's Hospital in Paddington. And I found I got itchy feet again when I was at St Mary's Hospital in Paddington, and I wanted to break out and go abroad again. And VSO on this occasion sent me to Papua New Guinea. And I spent a year in Papua New Guinea as a medical student and had an extraordinary experience there. Learning, I often say, more medicine in Papua New Guinea than I ever did at Cambridge University or at St Mary's Hospital in Paddington in London. Yes. And then I came back to the UK. I qualified as a doctor and got married, and with my wife and then a 15-month-old baby, we went to Nepal, where I worked in the field of tuberculosis control in a remote village, Hindu village in Nepal. Then came back again to Marlborough and then joined the medical practice in Marlborough. And it was one evening that I was sitting watching television and I saw a remarkable program on the television by a man called John Pilger, who was a well-known Australian journalist.
Yes.
And he was the first journalist to go into Cambodia immediately following the terrible genocide that had occurred in Cambodia during the years 1975 to 79, when it was estimated that about 1 million people died at the hands of the Khmer Rouge led by Pol Pot in what became known as the killing fields of Cambodia. Yes. I went out there as a member of Oxfam's emergency team working in the field of nutrition. And I often say, and I think this is relevant, that experience and listening to the stories that people had to tell of what had happened to them in the killing fields and how they'd lost family members and so on, that was a turning point in my life. I felt that everything I'd done before that, the time in Togo, in Papua New Guinea and in Nepal, had been preparing me for that experience in Cambodia, and that everything that came after Cambodia came about as a result of that experience. I'd witnessed such terrible traumas that these people had been through. And I think that's stimulated me to want to make the world a more peaceful, prosperous and just world. And my return to Marlborough in 1980, after I'd been in Cambodia for 4 months, it coincided with the publication of the Brandt Report. The Brandt Report was produced by Willy Brandt, who had been the Chancellor of West Germany, because Germany at that time was divided into East and West. And West Germany, he was the Chancellor of West Germany. And Willy Brandt was a remarkable man who felt that we really must do something about the huge disparity between the very rich in the north, in Europe, in America, in China, and so on, and the very poor in the south, in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, in so on. And he got together a group of ex-prime ministers and foreign ministers from countries of the North and the South to sit together over a period of, I think it was about 6 to 9 months, that they sat together to explore why it was that on the one hand at that time, the Americans were sending at vast expense, huge expense, they were sending people to the moon, to land on the moon. And at the same time, there was a huge, terrible famine that was taking place in Ethiopia at that time. People were dying of starvation in Ethiopia. Why was there this terrible imbalance between the so-called very rich and the very poor? What can we do about it? And the outcome of the deliberations between these different people, ex-prime ministers and ex-foreign ministers, was the production of the Brandt Report, which, to give it its full title, was North-South, a Programme for Survival. And one of the recommendations of the report was that we really needed to be a feeling of interdependence. We are all interdependent. We are dependent on each other. And one of the ways of creating that feeling of interdependence was to form partnerships between communities in the North and communities in the South. And a group of us in Marlborough, I was not the only ex-VSO volunteer. There were one or two others, and there were also some adults, some older people who had had international experience. One of them in particular, a man called Bill Spray, who had been a teacher at Marlborough College when I was a student there. He had actually been the headmaster of a Methodist school in northern Nigeria. And he brought together a group of about 8 of us to sit round the table together to study the Brandt Report and say, what is it saying to us? And what it was saying to us was, we need to form a partnership with a community somewhere in the global South. And we then drew up a sort of list of which countries that we might approach based on, firstly, proximity. So we wanted a country that was reasonably close. We didn't want to have to spend huge amounts of money flying, for example, to Papua New Guinea. We wanted somewhere that was close. We wanted a country in which English was spoken, so probably a Commonwealth country. And we wanted a country that was politically stable. We didn't want a country in which there was a civil war going on or whatever. And we drew up a list of 10 countries based on those criteria. And we sent a letter to the high commissioners in London of those 10 countries. And very importantly, the letter that went to the high commissioners, which I wrote with the help of others, said, "Dear Mr," and they were all Misters, the high commissioners in those days, "Dear Mr. High Commissioner, a group of us in a small market town in Wiltshire in the UK called Marlborough would like to form a partnership with a community in your country. We do not," underlined, "we do not see this as an opportunity for us, the rich, to help you, the poor, but rather we see it as an opportunity for us perhaps to sit under a mango tree together, recognizing that you have strengths and weaknesses in your country, just as we have strengths and weaknesses in our country. Let us sit under that mango tree together and get a feeling of mutual understanding and learn about each other's culture, our different faiths, etc., so that we can help to produce a more peaceful, more prosperous, and a more just world." The letter went off to these 10 high commissioners, and it was the High Commissioner for the Gambia, the Honorable Abdoulaye Bojang, who wrote back to me and said, "Dear Dr. Maurice, I think this is a wonderful idea, and I think you should form a link with the community of Gunjur, which of course was where he had been at school himself. So it was thanks to Abdoulaye Bojang that we formed the partnership with Gunjur.
Fantastic. Doctor, this is emotional, but really, it's just like music to me, what is going on anyway, and I'm learning a lot that I didn't know about the formation of the Gunjur and Marlborough, this unique and one of the most successful partnership in the world. We have Mr. Jabi says, to me, Dr. Nick Maurice isn't only a GP, he is a philanthropist, a philosopher, explorer, adventurist, and very, very humanist, especially to the poor. If I have my ways, I would love to see him knighted for all his wonderful services. Long may you live, our Gambian Dr. Nick Maurice. And Mr. Bojang, Fakeba Abdoulaye Bojang's brother, says, Dr. Nick Maurice is indeed a servant of God, and he has touched thousands of hearts in a very powerful and positive manner. Only the Almighty can reward his services. To be knighted is the least he should be rewarded for. Within him longevity and all over the place. I have Sally Emlo says, Assalamu alaikum to you, doctor. And we have our own sister, the Nubian queen, as she calls herself. Hello, Mr. Ibrahim, and greetings to you. Dr. Nick, the question that I'm going to come, you kind of answered that. What was it about your life that finally provoked you into developing the partnership between Gunjur and Marlborough? You can say something about that. And after that, maybe you can go to the next question and say, how did you persuade others in Marlborough to become engaged in supporting the partnership, that you designed? But the first question and the second question, because you touch it a little bit there.
Well, I do want to make one very, very important point. People have been making very, very kind remarks about me, but the benefits that accrued to me personally and to so many people from Marlborough who visited Gunjur have been quite extraordinary. I mean, I consider Gunjur to be my second home. My relationship with so many people in Gunjur has been so strong, and I've learned so much from that partnership that it's been a mutual relationship. We've all gained from the partnership. It's not just Dr. Nick Maurice. Everybody has been a part of it, and everybody, I think, has gained from it. So in terms of how I persuaded other people in Marlborough, as I said earlier, we already had a number of people in Marlborough who had had some international experience. And it was not difficult, I think, to encourage others to get involved in this. I think they thought this as a very exciting project, something that really warmed the heart. And of course, it was made even more exciting when we had our very first Gambian visitors coming to Marlborough and staying in Marlborough, living with families in the community and introducing those families to a different lifestyle and different culture and a different faith and so on. So it was that connection between people that was so important. One of the very first people that came to us was the late Sandang Bojang. And he came with a young man called Lamin Bojang, who now lives in America. And Sandang stayed with us in Marlborough. It was an opportunity for us to introduce him to the key people in Marlborough, the mayor of Marlborough and so on. And he was wonderful in that he was such a warm and friendly person. And, I have to say that it was almost unheard of to find people of African origin to come to Marlborough. So here, almost for the first time, was somebody from an African background coming to this community. And I think it excited people that, we were now experiencing difference for the first time in a community that was very, very strongly white, middle class, and so on. and it excited people. And Lamin Bojang, of course, he stayed for 2 years and studied at St. John's School in Marlborough. And it was the first time that the school had ever had somebody of African origin in that school. And he was brilliant in the sense that everybody wanted to engage with him. They loved him very much indeed. He was a great ambassador for the Gambia, for Gunjur, and also for the partnership between our two communities. At the same time, we sent a young girl, Sally Lovelace, to Gunjur. She took a gap year, and she lived with the late Mangamang Toure and his family for a whole year in Gunjur. No, 2 years, I beg your pardon, 2 years. And she taught English in the upper basic school in Gunjur. So she was, as Lamin was in Marlborough, she was introducing people in Gunjur to a white resident who was there for a period of 2 years teaching English. So it was all about mutual learning, mutual understanding. And then, of course, we started sending groups of people from Marlborough to Gunjur. The very first group was the very first time I went to Gunjur, was in 1985, when a group of 15 of us, led by the then mayor, Nick Fogg, with whom I had lunch this morning. And he sends his very warm regards to everybody. Nick Fogg was the mayor, and we went to Gunjur, 15 of us. We lived with different families in the community. And of course, at that time in Gunjur, there was no access to electricity. There was no telephone system. There was no piped water system. So we were living very much with local people and understanding the conditions under which they were living. And we helped local people to construct a 5-classroom block in the primary school. And the headmaster of the primary school, Mamadou Bojang, became a very good friend. And indeed, the following year, Mamadou came over to Marlborough and stayed with my wife, Kate, and myself for a month. And we had a wonderful time with Mamadou. And that experience of living in Gunjur for those young people and getting engaged in a building project alongside young people of Gunjur was very, very important. And it was the sort of foundation on which the rest developed. And then the following year, we had a group of 15 people from Gambia, from Gunjur, who came and lived with us in Marlborough. And they helped us with a project which was to construct an adventure playground for a rather a poorer part of the community, so that children had access to an adventure playground. So it was always based on this mutual benefit. We can learn from each other, we can help each other, and so on and so forth. And at the same time, we can really, by living together, we can learn about a different culture, etc.
Thank you so much, Doctor. I'm going to come there later on when we exhaust our questions and we have time. That's how do you avoid being paternalistic, because some of the partnership we saw in the world is all one-way thing and denigrating the other sky in a way, belittling them, even unintentionally sometimes. Yes. And I'm going to ask you later what you learned from Gunjur and all those things. But my old brother, Lamin Dabo, say you are a great man, and Sehu says, what a modest man. I'm going to say that even the honest praises he's getting, he is sharing with all of Marlborough. Dr. Nika Esa Sumare also, and Omar Scattred, Janneh. And Sehu Jabi says, my late grandpa, Sandam Bojang, may his departed soul continue to rest in peace. And Sally says, I heard from many people that he is so humanitarian, care for the poor. You see, Doctor, this is so important because a lot of people, this Sally was a student under the Marlborough block, that Nobel, the yes. Kurum, and I taught them there, me and Sehu Jabi. But one of the questions that I want you to address before we jump to our next question is, Jalika Sinda Turka says, what has Gunjur gained from the Marlborough link? Tell, maybe I say pray tell, or maybe please tell. Being a part of the group briefly in 2005 and 2006, the outcome of my involvement, there was no outcome in regard of my position. The initial reason for the link was a good idea, as explained by Dr. Nick Morris, but this fizzled out and it become them and us. Anyway, I can answer this because I am the chairman of Kombosilla Association in the UK. And I can say half of our members who are highly educated at Gambian standard today with degrees and degrees and degrees, and some of our doctors, some of our all over the place, came through the Marlborough Gunjur link, and they are here, and we know last year, 2019 to 2020, the diaspora Gambian sent in this COVID about 48% of Gambia's GDP. And then the citizens of Gunjur are not, an isolated case in the diaspora. But the whole, my uncle Sandang Bojang, he's never traveled before. But I came here back in 1994, I think. I came in Sarah Simpson in Dorset.
Oh yes.
When they had that problem with one of the madman, Fabio, and we came together. I found Mr. Toure here. I found Omar Toure here. I found Boyo Toure also. They were students, doing some technical. I think my uncle Sehu Maridabo also came, and they went back, and he is one of the managers in one of the hotels. So, but I want you to address some of these things, and from there, I was also going to say Umi Toure is here, Mankamang's daughter. So it's good to bless memory to Mankamang and Lord Chillit and Uncle Sandang anyway. We will conclude by at least, remembering those who did very well in the Marlborough and they pass out, they're not here with us. Go ahead, Doctor. Can you respond to that?
Well, I'm not entirely sure what the question is, but I mean, to say that the benefits, basically what happened was that on the one hand, we were sending groups from Marlborough to Gunjur and from Gunjur to Marlborough. So these groups were coming over, and we had, for example, the second group that went from Marlborough in 1987. They helped to construct a fence around a mango orchard. They planted something like 250 mango trees in Gunjur. The second group that came from Gunjur to Marlborough, they helped us to construct a cycle track along the site of a railway line between Marlborough and Swindon. The railway line the railway track had stopped. There was no longer a railway line. And sorry, I've got a problem here.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Yeah, and it was decided that we should have a cycle track rather than the railway line. So the group that came over in 1988 from Gunjur to Marlborough, 15 of them stayed with us in Marlborough, helped to construct the cycle track. So it was all about mutual benefits. And then we recognized that one of the most important aspects of the visits of Gambians to Marlborough was the learning that we were gaining from having such close relationships with people from a very different culture and a very different faith. And we felt that it was very, very important that young people in particular should have this opportunity to meet with people from Gunjur. And we then set up in Marlborough what we call a development education centre. It was known as the Third World Education Centre, but I didn't like the word Third World, and we eventually renamed it as the Marlborough Development Education Centre. And this provided an opportunity for when Gambians came over to live with us in Marlborough, they would go into schools, and these were all white rural schools in Wiltshire. So introducing young children as young as sort of 5 or 6 up to the age of 18 in different schools, introducing them to a completely different culture, a completely different faith, meeting people of African origin for the first time. And that was very important. I mean, I felt that, and I still feel very strongly, that if young people are to be prepared for the world that they are living in and will be working in, the more diversity we get within the schools, the better, so that children are prepared for the world that they will be living in and working in. And here were we, I mean, this is now back in the 1980s, for the very first time, introducing this diversity to young children in schools. So that was very important. But it was at the same time, the young people from Marlborough who were spending time in Gunjur, they were, we were sending young girls and boys in their gap year to teach in the upper basic school on a regular basis, as well as sending groups. And the learning that they were gaining was quite extraordinary. And many of those young people then decided that they wanted to take up international development. And when they came back from their time in Gunjur, they would apply to universities to study international development, particularly at, for example, Sussex University, which has got a very, very good Department of International Development, or SOAS in London. And many of them are now, many years later, are working in the field of international development. I mean, I think of one in particular, for example, Miranda, who spent a year teaching English in the upper basic school in Gunjur. She got in touch with me from Gunjur and she said, would I be able to write a letter for her to study at Lancaster University? She wanted to study international development. I did that. She came back, she studied at international development, and then she joined an NGO in Sri Lanka. She worked in Sri Lanka for 2 years. She then ran the United Nations Development Program in Vietnam, and then she became the head of UNICEF in West Africa for a period of about 10 years. So, and that's just one example of the benefits that people accrued from living in Gunjur and working in Gunjur and learning about a different culture and a different way of life. Yeah,
that's fine, Doctor. Thank you so much. I hope I think Gunjur people or the Gambian people should kind of explain or say what they learned from the Marlborough. It's not perfect, but many people will tell me they learn a lot from it anyway. It could have been better as always. But Mr. Jabi, I think that is important. He said, I learned a lot from the Gunjur-Marlborough link, especially with my own organization, Goodwin Development Trust of Hull City. He was the Gambia rep there for a while. And then he said through learning a lot from Marlborough. But the 5 classroom that you built, we were the first students and my grade 6 who had our tutorial there or our teaching sessions there, and we were from kind of makeshift classrooms where when rain comes on, sometimes lizard or snakes will crop up, and then we will all run away from the classes, or any time when we come back and we have to go to the bush and cut the palm leaves and all those things to build a classroom. So to see myself in spotless, woods, white, and all those things in the classroom, white classroom, we're not thinking of rain coming and we're running away and all those things. That was really, really humbling. And I can see a lot of students whom I taught in those classrooms are here commenting. Salim is one of them, many others. But Mr. Abdullah Manjan says Dr. Maurice and Marlborough group brought so much assistance to the community of Gunjur. And Lamin says, good evening, Dr. Maurice, as guest, and Ebrima, hosting this very interesting discussion. Dr. Nick, I know one of the aim when you sat as the brand group before you go to Gunjur was to form a partnership link with a community in the third world of a similar size to Marlborough, a partnership which will give us through knowledge of the lives of our partners the authority to advocate on their behalf and others' behalf. Inside of that, he said, what did you see as the underlying principles in the relationship between the two communities? What did you see?
Well, as I have said, I think the underlying principle was about mutual learning, that we in Marlborough have as much to learn from the people of Gunjur as they might have to learn from us. So we did not want this kind of paternalistic, we are rich, you are up here, you are poor and you're down here. We saw this as a relationship of equality. And what was interesting was that after we'd been exchanging people between the two communities, people from Gunjur helping us in Marlborough helping people in Gunjur, so it was very much mutual. People in Gunjur began to say to us, this is all very well, but you have to accept that we are a poor community. You have to accept that, for example, 20% of our children are dying under the age of 5 of preventable diseases. You have to accept that only 10% of our women are literate. You have to accept that we don't have access to clean water. You have to accept that we can't get grants to set up small businesses, and so on and so forth. And we said, no, we don't want to get involved in an aid program, because immediately that puts us on a level of inequality, us the rich helping you the poor. But then I'll never forget, I think it was Sandang Bojang who said to me, Nick, we have a saying in Gambia that we were given 2 ears and only 1 mouth. So we have 2 ears to listen more and 1 mouth to speak less. You should listen to what we are saying. We want your assistance in developing Gunjur and getting involved in a program of development. And so we did listen. We had a long debate, and we did listen, and we agreed that yes, we must listen to what people in Gunjur are saying, and yes, we must assist with some of these issues of women's literacy, of health education, etc., etc. And it was at that point that we invited. I've now forgotten. Oh, yes, it was Usman Cham. Usman Cham was the director of Action Aid in the Gambia at that time. And he came and conducted what was known as a PRA, a participatory rural appraisal. And basically what that was dividing the community up into different groups. So one group would consist of young girls, another group would consist of old men, another group would consist of old women, another group would consist of young boys. And these different groups, because they were together, they were asked the question, what do you see as the priorities for the development of your community? If the young girls had been in the presence of old men, they wouldn't have had the courage to speak. So they were kept separate. and likewise the young boys and so on. So these 4 different groups were kept separate and were asked the question, what do you see as the priority for the development of the community of Gunjur? Having received the answers, Usman Cham then brought all the groups together. And there was a large meeting at which all the groups were present, and Usman Cham then gave a presentation of what the community saw, the different groups saw as the priorities for the development. And it was on the basis of that PRA that we then engaged in a development program. And at this end, we were very, very fortunate. I had a good friend who was working for the National Lottery, and we won a grant of £407,000 to set up a charity in the Gambia, a development organization, Tarud, Trust Agency for Rural Development. And we then we had initially, as the director of Tarud, a Canadian by the name of Michael Aylward, who was the director, the first director of Tarud for a period of 2 years. And he then started this development program in Gunjur. And Tarud exists to this day, run now by Jabang, very successfully, and they're doing extraordinary work in Gunjur.
That's true. Thank you so much, Doctor. I think my own brother Marlon Jassi says, I think the culture of sharing was part of the fruits, of the link. And Esa Sumare says, I become involved with the link when I was just 13 years old and still help volunteers at any time they come to Gunjur. So it is a pleasure. Young people are just involved and they're sharing their experience with us. Yeah. But Dr. Nick, you said about, some of the aids and all those things, but where did the money come from to pay for example, the group, the young people from Gunjur to come to Marlborough and vice versa? We will come why this trip stops. We will come to that and you will explain that. But, where did the money come from, for these exchange visits?
Well, one of the, because the Gambia was in those days under the leadership of Sadauda Jawara, it was a Commonwealth country. And we approached the Commonwealth Youth Exchange Group here in the UK, and we got grants from the Commonwealth Youth Exchange Programme to enable us, to send young people from Marlborough to Gunjur, but also to bring young Gunjurians to Marlborough. So the Commonwealth Youth Exchange Programme was really, really very important. But we also ran a lot of fundraising events in Marlborough, and people were very generous. Because they were having Gambians living with them and staying with them, they could see the point of this. They saw how much benefit they were getting from having Gambians living and staying with them. And therefore they were prepared to put their hand in their pockets and help to support the program and to fund Gambians coming over to Marlborough. So it was through a number of different agencies that we were receiving money, and individuals putting their hands in their pockets because they could see the value of this exchange program.
Yes, yeah. That's clear enough. And Doctor, you wrote in your book that the underlying principle in the relationship was mutual learning, but you in Marlborough has as much to learn from the relationships as we in Gunjur, for example, and yet you became engaged in the major development program. What was it that made you change your mind in this sense?
Well, as I've said earlier, it was because I was told that we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a purpose, and it was the people of Gunjur who were saying we want this assistance, and I think in reality it didn't actually make a difference to the relationship. I don't think it really changed the attitudes of people in Marlborough, and I don't think it changed the attitude of people in Gunjur. I mean, I still think that people felt basically this was about mutual learning, mutual understanding. And yes, for goodness sake, we're friends. What do friends do? They help each other. So, you know, and let's be quite clear about this, that while this sort of assistance that people from Gunjur were giving us was rather different, it wasn't sort of practical assistance like building classroom blocks so much as introducing young people in schools in Wiltshire to their different culture, their different faith. Here they were meeting people of an Islamic faith for the very first time. And this was of enormous importance to young people at this end. So yes, the balance was slightly tipped, if you like, but I think we still maintained that understanding that we were all learning all the time.
Yeah, that's fine. You know, Doctor, but it's not always rosy. You know, the relationship, it has bumps, you know, it has potholes here and there. And that's why I ask, you know, there must have been occasional disagreements, you know, between Marlborough and Gunjur. What problems did you face in the relationship between the two communities, and how did you overcome them?
Well, I hesitate to say this, but I mean, the biggest problem I think that we had, the very biggest problem that we had was in 2008, when we had a group of 13 Gambians led by my dear brother Mankamang Ture, living with us in Marlborough. And they were working in schools in Marlborough and so on. And one day, 4 of the 13 in the group stood, unbeknownst to us, they stood on the pavement in the high street in Marlborough, and they were picked up by a Gambian living in Nottingham, and they were taken off to Nottingham, and we never saw them again. So they disappeared, and as far as we were concerned, became illegal immigrants. That was a major problem. We felt that the right thing to do, because we were concerned for their welfare. We didn't know where they'd gone. We didn't know. It wasn't until later we discovered that they'd gone to Nottingham. But we were very concerned about their welfare. They just disappeared as far as we were concerned. So we got in touch with the police. We got in touch with the Home Office to see if they could help identify where these people had gone to. But they weren't able to help. The police said we haven't got the facilities to be able to do that. But unfortunately, it left a mark on the Marlborough branch group in the sense that the Home Office now knew that we were not to be trusted having Gambians, because Gambians will leave and become illegal immigrants. I think that was probably the biggest problem in all the time that we ever faced. Was that particular issue. And as you know, as from 2010, it's been impossible for us to get visas for young Gambians to come to Marlborough. Partly because of that event, I suspect, but I think largely because the whole policy of the UK government now is we don't trust people coming from Africa because they will just go underground and become illegal immigrants. And therefore, we're going to close the doors and we're not going to allow Africans to come to the UK. We're not going to give them visas and so on. The Home Office, I'm afraid, the whole sort of atmosphere has completely changed. And of course, that has undermined everything that we stood for. We stood for the exchange of people between our two communities. And now it's a one-way stream of traffic. People from Marlborough going to Gunjur, but not, unfortunately, people from Gunjur coming to Marlborough. So that was the biggest problem that we had.
That's sad though. But that will have lead to my next question. But you've answered that it has been many years since young Gambians been in group to stay and work in Marlborough. And I'm going to ask why is that? But anyway, because of the Home Office thing, but I don't know whether Gambia joined in the Commonwealth now. That might have any impact on that, or might be the Britain coming out of Europe. maybe they will see the relevance of, forming partnership with some of the Commonwealth countries, so that a very fantastic link like this can continue, because the whole foundation of the link is for two communities, to mingle and understand each other's life. And that has been the aim of one of the aims, the four aims, one of them of for Marlborough Brand Group. And this will be very, very crucial for the continuation of the link. But unfortunately, we have the conservatives, so maybe they're not thinking about that. So, but I'm going to ask, what impact did the relationship between Gunjur and Marlborough have on you personally, and what other activities did it lead to?
I could talk for a very long time on this subject, but let me quickly say that while we have talked about the Gunjur-Marlborough link up until now, it was interesting that at the same time, there were other communities, to a very large extent led by Oxfam. There were other communities in the UK that were beginning to form partnerships with communities in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America. And it was in about 1986 that a group got together and decided to form an organization called the UK One World Linking Association, UKAULA. And that really, that organization was bringing together communities in the UK that had got these partnerships, so that we could share the experiences that we were having through our links with each other. We could learn from what other groups were doing in the UK and so on and so forth, and bring all that learning together to encourage and enforce what we were already doing. And we also would arrange meetings of UKAULA when we had partners from the Global South who were with us in the UK, so that we could then listen to what the partners in the Global South were saying about how they felt that these partnerships should develop. And it was an opportunity, particularly because some of the community links in UKAULA were very much based on, we must help these poor people in Africa. And for those of us that were really involved in mutual learning and understanding from each other, we were able to preach that sermon, if you like, to those who were much more paternalistic in their attitude to linking. So that was important. And I subsequently became the director of UKAULA and was director for a period of 10 years. But one of the things that I felt, having become the director of UKAULA, was that we really ought to be exploring a dream. And my dream was, and it was shared by many other people, how can we get to the point in the UK where nobody escapes life without being touched by a partnership with a community in the Global South, whether that be through their school, a school partnership between a school in Manchester and a school in Nairobi, let's say, whether it be through their hospital, a hospital in Southampton and a hospital in Kenya somewhere, whether it be through their youth group, their scouts, their music group. How can we get to the point where these partnerships embrace everybody, so that nobody escapes life without being touched by a partnership at some point? Mm-hmm. And it was on the basis of that that we brought together the directors of a large number of different international organizations to a meeting at Cumberland Lodge in Windsor Great Park. And at that meeting, which lasted for 2 days, we explored that dream. And it was on the basis of that that we decided to create this organization, Building Understanding Through International Links for Development. And I was appointed to be the director of Build, having been the sort of founder, if you like. And as a result of Build, then we did a lot of work with different agencies, not least with the British Council. And as a result of the work that we were doing, we set up in Westminster, in Parliament, an all-party parliamentary group called Connecting Communities. And this gave us access to senior politicians. For example, we would have a meeting with the Secretary of State for Education. And this was, by the way, in a Labour government. And the Secretary of State for Education would sit and listen to us and listen to the head teachers of schools in the UK and schools in Africa, and would hear what we had to say about the benefits that were accruing to students in these schools through this partnership. And it was as a result of this that the government assigned £25 million to a school partnership program. And by 2010, we had something of the order of, I think it was 3,500 schools in the UK that had partner schools in the Global South. And likewise, we had a meeting with the Secretary of State for Health and to have a discussion about the possibility of developing partnerships between hospitals in the UK and hospitals, particularly in Africa. And again, Claire Short, her name was, she was the Secretary of State for International Development. And she said, I will give you £25 million to develop this program of encouraging partnerships between hospitals in the UK and hospitals in Africa. And by 2010, we had something of the order of 150 hospitals in the UK that had these partnerships. And they were exchanging people between the hospitals in Africa and the hospitals in the UK. And it was quite interesting that a study was done of the impact of a hospital in Northumbria in northern England, of the partnership that they had with a hospital in Tanzania. And the study showed that that one of the impacts in Northumbria of this partnership was that people in the Northumbrian school were working much more closely together because they'd been to Tanzania, they'd witnessed what they had seen in Tanzania, they brought all that learning back to Northumbria, and the whole culture of the hospital changed as a result of that experience. They also saw that the people in Tanzania were working under very difficult conditions with poor resources, and it made them realize and understand that in Northumbria there was a huge amount of wastage in the National Health Service. What can we do about the wastage, given that, for example, there are people in Tanzania who are working with very limited resources. We've got these huge resources, but we are wasting so much of it. We must do something about that. So again, it was mutual learning. So Build really was a very important organization. But then in 2010, the culture completely changed when the coalition government came in, and all the funding was withdrawn, and its Build is now a shadow of its former self, I'm afraid.
Oh, that's unfortunate anyway. And I think, the coalition, the Lib Dems and the Conservatives, which is on a really, really sad situation on the part of the Conservative, because the Secretary of State is on the Labour, that formed this fantastic partnership between the Global South and the Global North. We have a lot of people like my own brother Malan Jassi said, we as the two communities need to do a SWOT analysis, that is strength, weaknesses, in opportunities and threat analysis, with a view of continuing this great link. But I have a young man here, Boto S. Bojang, and I think this is really, really emotional. And Doctor, you need to, maybe the younger people in Marlborough need to come here and talk to the young people of Gunjur who are supplicating, for that they can build this link to even another level where you people, the founding fathers, left it to. They said these links shouldn't have disappeared. I was young when it was active and have heard a lot that both parties have derived from one another. Ways and means must be devised to reunite this meaningful community link that has ever happened in the history of Gunjur, perhaps the Gambia at large. Maurice in particular is second to none. Kulukochi as a community being outskirts of Gunjur, Maurice helped pay for transport to and from the Gunjur primary school for a specific period. He didn't stop there, but to travel children to and fro the Gunjur primary school. I think this says a lot, not you particularly, because this all comes within the umbrella of this fantastic and unique link, but individuals did fantastic things to individuals. So the link is so mutual benefit and so encompassing that, to see it dwindling down, that's really, really sad. I don't know what we're going to do, even if the visa system is not going, so that we can rekindle this link. And yes, a lot of young people who are benefiting, even to share a bed with all our homes. What a pride it is for Dr. Nick to come and stay with my Uncle Sandang, when there's no toilet, and you have all the strange noise and the calling to prayers and many, many other things, and you still be patient. That tells a lot about the mutuality of this relationship. And I hope the young people who are there now can know how important this is. And we should not be put off because of the conservatives or any political party restrict us from reaching to each other, because of visa restrictions and all those things. Dr. But I'm going to leave you not long ago anyway, but the discussion is so interesting. And as the young people here, you can hear, they were young, very young, when you people were coming and all those things, but still, they are dreaming of this relationship to continue, because of the personal benefit and the communal benefit they deserve for the Gambia, and particularly for Gunjur, because in this view, the people of Gunjur, they don't know, they cannot pay you anyway, they cannot pay the people of Marlborough for this fantastic relationship, but what they can do is they decided that they're going to nominate you for the 2020 Nobel Peace Prize in recognition of your work over many years. Not only you, but we cannot nominate everybody, to the Nobel Peace Prize anyway, in promoting developments and international partnership between communities, especially Gunjur and Marlborough. What is your reaction to this? I know it's not personal, but really speaking, is about the recognition of the whole institution of our linking, our partnership. I want you to tell me and the viewers your reaction to this gesture by the people of Gunjur.
Well, I have to say, when I heard that my name had been put forward to be nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, I honestly had tears in my eyes. I was completely overwhelmed by this extraordinary tribute. And I made it absolutely clear, and I make it clear now, that this tribute should not be for Dr. Nick Maurice, but it should be for the people of Gunjur and the people of Marlborough who have contributed so much to the development of the partnership between our two communities. The Nobel Peace Prize is called the Peace Prize for a purpose. It is because I believe that we have all together contributed to peace, prosperity, and justice between our two communities. And therefore, it should, and I'm not holding my breath, that Dr. Nick Maurice of Marlborough is going to be the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, because I see that some of the other people who've been nominated include, for example, Black Lives Matter, include WHO, include Alexei Navalny, who is, trying to outdo President Putin. So, there are people, I'm sure, who deserve the prize more than I personally do, although I don't think they deserve the prize more than the people of Gunjur and the people of Marlborough who worked together deserve it. So, yes, I feel very, very overwhelmed. And I just have to say I must thank those people who together have worked to produce this nomination, not least the Honourable Barrow, who I know has done a huge amount of work in nominating me. And I feel very, very honoured and very humbled by the nomination.
Thank you, Doctor. Definitely, as I said, is in the recognition of the whole institution of this successful linking. Just that not everybody can be equal. And we can only nominate what I am. The fact that the Gunjurians sat and think, what can we do? To recognize fantastic people who just not only build this linking, but your personal relationships, with our people from Uncle Sandang. When you came there, I was a young man, and that developed to your relationship with Monkey and many other things. And Bojang, Mamoudou Bojang is my uncle also.
Yeah.
And this also has to take me back to remember those who are not with us, from Gordon to Lord Jude, to Mankamang, to Uncle Sandang, who are some of the founding fathers, from our end and from Marlborough's end, are not with us here, and we cannot forget them. We treasured, and we shall treasure all what they've done for this link, and their names will be embalmed in the history of Gunjur, for the rest of the day, and the two communities, So I know this is emotional, Doctor, since Mankamang days and many of them, Uncle Sandang, you were not able to travel to the Gambia because of the COVID and all those things. But anyway, we have to recognize them. We don't have to shy away because they are not here with us, even though it's emotional. But we have to recognize their role, as people who tried everything to make this link successful, and we will remember them, and Gunjur will always remember them. Go ahead.
Well, I there's no more that I can say. You've said absolutely right that there have been, throughout the partnership, there have been key people who have made such important contributions to the partnership between the two communities. The other person that I would like to mention, and this goes back a long way, was Dr. Nyambiture, Bakary Toure, Dr. Nyambiture, who's a very good friend, and he was one of the founding fathers of the partnership between Gunjur and Marlborough. He was the chairman of the Gunjur Link Committee for a time, until my dear brother Mankaman Toure took over from him. And there are many other people that I can think of who have made these really vital contributions to the partnership, both in Gunjur and Marlborough. I mean, in the Marlborough context, I think particularly of my old friend Bill Spray, who helped to set up the Marlborough Branch Group. He came with me to Gunjur with Lord Judd, and I can still remember the meeting that we had with Sadauda Jawara at that meeting, and that was really crucial. It was one of the very first really important meetings, and here was Lord Judd, who at that time was the director of Oxfam in Gunjur, recognized of this partnership and learning from it in all humility. So, yeah, I mean, there are so many people that need to be recognized as having contributed to the partnership. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Before just your last word, I'm just going to you mentioned Dr. Nyambi. I think Dr. Bai Bojang also, my uncle Bai Bojang also.
Yes.
and he allowing his frame to be drawn and all those things. That was funny in your book. I'm just challenging the people, the viewers, to buy this book. Never doubt they will read a lot. And Uncle Sandang Bojan's son, Sehu Mari, say he was 2 years in 1986 when you visited them and stayed with them. Now he's in Wales with his wife. And so fantastic. I know, a Christian community. You've been in Togo and lived with Muslim families, but to see 10 people, even 1 people back in 1980s, in Marlborough, black people, that's very, very rare if it has ever happened. But to have more than 10 people on the street of Marlborough, that's going to be a special spectacle. But equally, you people from Marlborough to go and live in Gunjur, a predominantly Muslim community. But, really, now we have toilets and we have running water. But then the water, the pit latrines, the washing and with the bucket and all those things, the adjustment, of course, the diarrhea and the diet and all those things. How did you people manage to cope with this? It must be very challenging for you.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think some people found it. They were actually stimulated by living without all the facilities that we have in this country. They found it really, and they learnt so much from just living in a community where these things apparently didn't matter. The fact that you squatted over a hole in the ground and you washed out of a bucket, and they became of secondary importance. Yes. To the relationships that they were developing with the families that they were living with. These other things didn't matter. Having said that, there were certainly some people who did actually find it extremely difficult to adapt to that different environment. But by and large, people completely sort of accepted it, and actually in a way they rather enjoyed the fact that they didn't have the facilities that they had back at home. But I mean, I must just tell you a very quick story that yes. when Mamadou Bojang came to stay with Kate and me in Marlborough, I thought it was really important that I should show him the facilities and how the facilities in the house worked. Yeah. So I took him into our downstairs toilet, and I said, Mamadou, look, you can either sit on this or you can stand in front of it, depending on what you want to do. Okay, and when you've done what you have to do, this in the corner here is called a basin, and if you switch on that tap that has got a red knob on it, yes. Hot water will come out, and the one with the blue knob, cold water will come out. Be careful, you must mix the two because the hot water is very hot and you'll scald your hands, etc., etc. And Mamadou watched all this, and he said, and where does the water go? And I said, I've no idea, but I've no idea where it goes. And then I took him upstairs to his bedroom, and I explained, that he could sleep. He had to sleep under the bedclothes because it was cold in the UK, and he would get cold if he didn't sleep under the bedclothes. And he hadn't really climbed upstairs before because he'd always lived in single-story buildings in Gunjur. So going upstairs was a new experience for him. And then, having introduced him to all these different things, I then said, Mamadou, have you got any questions for me? He said, Nick, I have one question for you. I said, oh, what is that? He said, where is Mecca? And I thought to myself, you stupid man, I should have thought of this. Of course, he's climbed into an aeroplane for the very first time. He's flown to the UK. He finds himself in a completely strange environment. And the first thing he will want to do is to thank thank the Lord that he has arrived safely. So I pointed in the direction that I thought was southeast towards Mecca, took him into the garden, and I said, Mecca is over there Mamadou, and he said, "Please, can I have a bucket of water, and please, can I have a mat that I can lay out on the grass in your garden?" And I said, "Yes, of course." And I produced him with this bucket of water. He then did his ablutions, and then he prayed to Mecca in the garden. And it was a very, and that was the sort of learning experience that we were gaining all the time, you know. And so often, you know, for example, meals would be interrupted. We would be sitting around the table having a meal, and one of our Gambian visitors would immediately say, it's time I said my prayers. And they would get up and, you know, in the kitchen, they would face Mecca and pray to Allah.
Doctor, one thing before you just say your last word, that is when our visitors went to elderly or retired people homes and all the care homes and all those things, and they were shocked, they were amazed. Why do you have to kind of put your old people? And you mentioned in your book, we should not see old people as burden. And I think that will come from your experience, not only from Gunjur, but Togo and all those things, where we celebrate our old people. We said, you've done fantastic. We need to live with you and take care of you and all those things. There's also a mutual learning that you people can learn from them. And as you also said, even with the mega society thing, people are not thinking of all those things, the wastage, all those things. But when our people visited and visited the care homes and all those things, I want you to emphasize that, so that maybe we have that, and maybe we are belittling it. We don't know how important it is to not see our elderly as a burden, but people who are fantastically, they need to be celebrated because they did everything for us. At the very end of their life, we should not hold them in one place and think that we are too busy to take care of them. Go ahead, Doctor.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, that was a very important learning experience. I mean, as I have say frequently, one of the things that one learns in Gunjur is that you have what I would describe as a social wealth that to a very large extent in our society we have lost. And you're quite right. I mean, I can remember sitting where I'm sitting now in my sitting room, just across the road here, there is a care home which has 40 residents in it. And when Gambians would come over to stay with us, I would introduce them to the care home and they would be shocked. And they would say, for goodness sake, why are these people in a care? Why aren't they living with their families? And I found it a very, very difficult question to answer. The reality is that, we're all about making money, unfortunately, nowadays. It's more important that we make money. And therefore, we're all out working and we haven't got time to look after our elderly people, despite the fact that our elderly people brought us up when we were children. We haven't got time to look after them now. So we'll put them in a care home where they can be properly looked after. Well, properly looked after may be, but lacking that family community spirit that they would have if they were living at home. So that a very, very important learning experience, I think, for us at this end was listening to the reflections that Gambians had when they came to Marlborough about our way of life. And, they were they made us hold up a mirror to our lives and make us realize that actually we have not got everything right. There are lots of things that we have got wrong, that we have lost. And here were people with that social wealth that we have to a very large extent lost.
Thank you so much, Doctor. And I think, occasionally I will bring you here so that we can discuss, because, we want to hear this, some of the things, as you said, the social wealth that we are undermining, that we think is all about wealth and wealth and wealth, and we're not getting wealthier, but we are losing our wealth, which is important. That's the social wealth, and even if the people from Gunjur are losing that, they're coming in droves from their places and from the Gambia, crippling that country because we are just after the wealth that we don't have, separating the families and all those things. It's all about wealth and working and working and working to the extent that we lost everything at the end of the day. So for that to come from you, I think that will be a reference point and a reflection for younger people who think, even didn't put anything else, young as the age of 18 and 19, they didn't even try, they didn't even put in their foot in the journey of life, thinking that things cannot work here and prefer to be refugees to the, so that is so important. And I think, this is a wisdom for somebody who's know Gunjur in and out. I think what you know in Gunjur, I didn't know that there anyway. And we celebrate you. We honored you as we honored our fathers. We respect you and we recognize the contribution you people have done and the people of Gunjur also have done, and the impact they have on Marlborough. So this is really, really a humbling story. And I want my listeners to order this book so that what we are talking about, it will be there and it will be like a movie that we are watching, because this book is just going to be our Bible. We need to, anybody from Gunjur that can read and write, need to have this book and read it, because we need to make sure this link continue. We need to make sure this history continue. And from somebody outside, not within our own people. So that is humbling. Doctor, you can give your last word. And I'm going to bring you here again, because I saw you. I read a lot about you in Calais, in France, in the jungle there, helping refugees and all those things who has no medical care. People just abandon them and see them as troublemakers, who want to intrude, who are just, bunch of, uncivilized people want to come into England and all those things, and left them there. And for some reason, even you retired, you just volunteer and stay there. Amazing. But we need to talk about that next time, because I have to leave you. We've been here for an hour, 1 hour, 30 minutes. You can tell us your last word and your last advice, or finally, and we will close the program until next time.
Well, all I can say is thank you very, very much indeed for inviting me to come on this program. And it's been a great privilege, and I have to say, it is wonderful to be able to reflect and reminisce about all the wonderful experiences that I have had through the Gunjur-Marlborough link, and the amount that I have learnt through that link. You very kindly, Ebrima, you very kindly paid tribute to my book. And what I would say is that if there is anybody listening who would like a copy of my book, I'd be very happy to send them a copy, and it would be as a gift. So do get in touch with me, and I'd be very happy to send them a copy of my book. And as you quite rightly say, it is to a very large extent, it's a history of the Gunjur-Marlborough link. And although I say it myself, I think just for that reason alone, it is worth reading. But thank you again very, very much. And thank you to all those who have participated this evening, and for the very kind words that so many of you have passed on in my direction. I really, really thank you. And thank you particularly for the nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize, which, should it go to Dr. Nick Morris, we will have a celebration where we can all together celebrate what we all together have achieved. So thank you so much.
Thank you indeed, Doctor. I will leave you with that, and we will come here probably next month, and we can continue some of this, because there's a lot. It's been since 1980s until today. There's a lot to discuss, and definitely you cannot achieve all these things, as a doctor, as all over the place, without the support of your family and our remembrance and our prayers to Kate, and fantastically tell her we equally, recognize her effort, because without her behind, nothing will work. Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.